It seems like almost every week those seeds that you plant as an entrepreneur and those people that you go out and meet and those connections you make, even the smallest things, you never know when they can blossom into something that, that's amazing.
Absolutely.
And something that I really learned, almost like a skill set at school was how to make something out of nothing, and being able to take the resources that you have, the opportunities that you have, and then connect the dots to create something new that nobody's seen before. Well, right now we are working on the build out for probably the most exciting new retail that's coming downtown, that has come down for a while.
I'm Andy Golding, partner and chief strategy officer of Kripke Enterprises. I'm excited to introduce my first episode of my new podcast, Toledo Works. In these podcasts, I speak with self-made business owners from Toledo, Ohio, to uncover their stories of success, perseverance, and triumph. This podcast is sponsored by Kripke Enterprises. At Kripke, recycling metal is not just good for the environment, it's good for business. This podcast is produced by Stewart Media Strategy. Today, I am very excited to introduce my first guest, Matt Rubin. Matt is a visionary in the world of urban revitalization. He is a principal of Crane Development based in downtown Toledo, and he is on a mission to breathe new life into distressed commercial properties since 2014. Starting with the project at 614 Adams Street, Matt's passion is securing investments and transforming once vacant properties into restaurants, retail, and living space. Additionally, Matt is married with 3 children. Welcome, Matt, to the first ever podcast.
Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate you being here. Now, the reason I wanted you, Matt, to be our first guest for this podcast is because our paths crossed once before. Our paths around 2014, when you were starting your business, I was looking to expand this business. And I had been given your name as someone who is potentially looking for new opportunity. So you and I met. You had said you had some other things going on. Who knew at that point what everything that would be going on? And you recommended another person to me who ended up being a great person, and it's all worked great. But the reason I wanted you to be first is because I feel like I was at the beginning of the crossroad of when you left the advertising world and went into the investment and revitalization world. Is that accurate? Am I right?
Yeah, it is. About that time in 2014, I was really fortunate to be working locally with an advertising agency, Hart Associates, and got really involved in the community, got to understand a lot of the different aspects and a lot of different entrepreneurs and network and meet people like yourself and like the gentleman that you mentioned that we ended
Patrick Richardson. Yep. It's no secret.
We ended up getting here at Kripke. I know he's really enjoyed it, and I think that's one of I think the small examples of it, how in Toledo and as an entrepreneur and when you're involved, things kind of always seem to come full circle. And I think I've found that from the time I first got involved in downtown real estate, to now, and it seems like almost every week those seeds that you plant as an entrepreneur and those people that you go out and meet and those connections you make, even the smallest things, you never know when they can blossom into something that that's amazing.
Absolutely.
and shocks you. So
Absolutely.
It's really great to see how things have worked out like that.
It really has. So you're in advertising and you decide that you want to go and revitalize buildings. Like, how does that even happen? You go from making cartoons and doing stuff like this to, tearing down buildings. How does that work? Tell me what that process was, and tell me what gave you the courage to do it.
Sure. I've always been more entrepreneurial, and while at school at the University of Toledo, got involved in several student organizations that kind of started from the ground up. And something that I really learned, almost like a skill set at school was how to make something out of nothing, and being able to take the resources that you have, the opportunities that you have, and then connect the dots to create something new that nobody's seen before that can be shocking.
Now, you were also the president of your class at the University of Toledo for how many years?
I was the student government president for 2 years.
Student government. Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so now you learn how to make something out of nothing, but again, you're in advertising. You've got a full-time job. You're like probably a regular paycheck. And tell me when the switch flipped.
Sure. I was working, one of our clients was a local real estate investment trust. And so I had started to learn a considerable amount about real estate just from being involved with that client. And the more I learned about, taking a long-term focus and looking at trends and really meeting the market and solving people's problems, real estate just started to really grow in my mind as a really exciting entrepreneurial venture that somebody like me without much experience could start that journey just by educating myself, reading books, going out and meeting other real estate professionals in the area. And so through doing that, I found enough courage to sit down and look at opportunities for real and spell out some pro formas and see what different opportunities could perform which way and what are the best ones. And then went out and sold that to a couple, my brother and another friend. We all invested some cash and we bought the building at 614 Adams Street in downtown Toledo, which is now Fowl and Fodder Restaurant.
That's amazing. And did you write a business plan? Was this what your pro formas? Was this like on paper in Excel? Was this real pro formas or like, Excel math?
It was Excel math. And at first it was looking at single-family houses near the University of Toledo and seeing, what are the potential rents there? What does that look like? And then what are these commercial properties in downtown Toledo looking like? And so I was living downtown at the time. This was before ProMedica had announced they were moving their headquarters down, and really started to, see the beauty down there. You've got, shipping ships that are going up and down the river. You've got bald eagles that are flying over your head.
Sure.
I mean, it's just there's so many cool things that go on.
Downtown's amazing.
Yeah, there's so many cool things that go on in that area, and so really started to see this potential, and that's what really made me take a hard look to say if more people are starting to move downtown, and then eventually ProMedica did make their announcement, and with all these people coming to work, there's going to be opportunities for places that they need to go eat and to shop,
for sure,
to live, and understanding downtown from being a resident for a while. And seeing those opportunities, it really pushed me to jump on it. And so that was when we had bought that building on Adams Street.
Now you have the pro forma for the building, all right? And now you've done some other projects. Now, when you look at that pro forma that you did for that business, using Excel math, and Excel, boy, it's a powerful tool. It can make you very wealthy. It can make you very poor with just tiny little percentages. Was that pro forma at all? Was it accurate? Was it not accurate? Were your projections, like, what was reality compared to what you thought it was going to be?
I would say the biggest difference there was probably in the timing. It took twice as long as we thought.
Runway.
Yep, the runway. Yeah, twice as long, and they say twice as long cost twice as much. Luckily, it didn't cost twice as much. We had one additional capital call that we had to make before getting everything up and running. But when it did, and I've recently gone back and looked at those things, and it's been kind of surprising to see how close some of those have actually.
So the numbers were accurate, but the time that it took to get to those numbers. So as an entrepreneur is listening, your advice or your practical tip is.
Plan accordingly, especially with something that you've never done before.
Right.
Timing, I think budgeting for double what you think is
that's got to be brutal.
Practice.
That's got to be brutal. So now you get the restaurant in, and when you get the restaurant in, someone approaches you and says, "Hey, what else are you doing? I kind of want to do this stuff too." And I believe that's when you met your partner.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. So tell me about your partnership and how did it start and how is it going now?
Sure. So after Fowl and Fodder I was starting to look at other opportunities in downtown Toledo. Found a 3-story building on 10th and Jackson, right across from Shoemaker, Loop, and Kendrick, and was able to make an off-market deal, put together.
What's an off-market deal?
So the building wasn't listed by a real estate agent. And typically, if you can, work directly with the buyer, there was a real estate agent that had made the introduction, but there wasn't an active listing, so I wasn't competing with other buyers to make the deal.
Okay.
And so with this building, had put together a program with some creative financing and with some investment as part of it, and had start to work my networks and get the word out. And through that had gotten connected with Julia Randalls, who had just moved to the Toledo area from Chicago. She had spent about 15 years in commercial construction, doing really large projects, really interesting stuff. She worked on the Shed Aquarium.
Oh my gosh! So for an ad guy to have a partner with 15 years experience, that had to be fantastic.
Exactly. Yep. I saw somebody that was a perfect complement and had all those skills that I didn't have. And when we're going into these buildings and tearing them up, there's only so far you can get on finding a good deal and being able to get the investment. You got to be able to manage that risk of construction. Which is really high.
And so a lot of people like partnerships. A lot of people. What are some of the highs and lows of this partnership? Not obviously the detail, but what are some of the difficulties of having? What are some of the great parts other than she brought great talent to the table, but when you want to be an entrepreneur and now you have a partner and you both have potentially different goals and different thoughts, like what are some low parts of partnership? What are some difficulties of partnership?
Sure.
Are you comfortable talking about low parts of partnership or just difficulty of partnership?
Sure. So I think we're naturally in conflict in our roles, that I'm always trying to get costs down and she's always trying to manage the risk. And so to do that, when I'm doing a performer for a project, I'll look at the market for what rents are and what we're going to see there, because it's hard to budget for above the market on what you can get on rent, and that's a way to, from my side of things, you can get in trouble if you think you're going to get more money than the market really is offering.
If you start doing Excel math.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
And so. For me, when I get to the construction line, I then say, okay, well, how much does this have to cost in construction for it to meet the market?
Right.
And, I'll kick that over to my partner, and she takes it, the opposite way, is that, well, this is the market for construction. And and so we will battle back and forth on that. So there's conflict there naturally. And so that always has to be worked out. But we get to the best result by doing that. And it's really helped guide us to see what are the best opportunities, really, where the work that it needs in construction is at a certain amount, and we can purchase the building and rent it out for a certain amount. What's that window of success there?
So have you ever gotten to a stalemate between what you think and what your partner thinks? And have you ever used a third party to help you walk through decision making? Have you ever had a mentor that has mentored both of you or has walked through issues or situations in a partnership? Because they're difficult.
Mm-hmm. We will reach out on occasion if we do get to a stalemate, and maybe there are other developers we can talk to and bounce off similar questions, or other contractors in the market where we can, Julia can say, Matt's beating up my numbers, saying that it's too high. Hey, contractor, what do you think this really is?
And that's how much plumbing is.
Yep, and that's what they'll typically say. And I've got to go back and I've got to be creative. I've got to find another creative financing tool or a different use or another way to make it work.
Sure. So you've talked about creative financing a couple times, mm-hmm. and budding entrepreneurs, a lot of them are going to need financing. What do you define as creative financing?
Mm-hmm. I would define creative financing as anything that is not your typical conventional bank loan.
Okay.
So one of the easiest ways to achieve getting some creative financing is with private seller financing. So if you buy a property, the owner maybe doesn't need all that cash right away. So we'll say, okay, will you hold on to the note, and can we arrange financing terms and pay a monthly, pay that note on a monthly basis going forward for a certain amount of time. And what that will do is it helps on the fees, on just the cost of the deal, and it helps with the speed. And typically, if that is the the disposition of the seller, that they don't need the cash right now. I mean, they're going to collect more money for that building than they would have before.
Right.
So that's one way in real estate you could do it. But using private investors, writing those notes, doing things like PACE financing.
What's that?
It's called Property Assessed Clean Energy Financing. And it's a program here in Toledo, throughout Lucas County, where you can perform energy improvements on an existing commercial structure.
Through the Port Authority?
Mm-hmm. Yep, through the Port Authority. And they'll give you up to 1/3 of the completed value of that building in zero down financing to do those improvements. And then the cost for that ends up on your tax bill rather than a bill
in your
from
property
a bank.
tax
On
bill.
your property tax.
All right, so it stays with the property.
Correct.
Indefinitely, or is there a term to it?
Yep,
or
there's a term.
Okay.
And that's actually how we were able to finance the improvements for the Fowl and Fodder property.
Really?
So the facade work that we did, the windows, the HVAC, those were done through PACE financing. So it was a way that we were able to get really scrappy at the beginning and not have to have a bunch of cash up front, but still be able to find a way to work with our tenant to have these improvements financed.
That's great. The Port Authority is a great resource for any business in this area. We used the Port Authority when we bought this building. They quarterbacked all of our financing relationships and Jobs Ohio, and I mean they were invaluable. And as a side note, what the Port Authority does in our community is unbelievable. And if anyone has a chance to learn more about the Port Authority, I highly recommend that they do, because it's a great organization. So what project are you working on as we speak?
Sure. Well, right now we are working on the build out for probably the most exciting new retail that's coming downtown, that has come down for a while. It's called Ridge and River. So it's an outdoor equipment and apparel shop. It's the first location for this store. The business was started by an entrepreneur, local here in Toledo as well. He's a 27-year-old guy and was working, I believe, with Owens Corning, and was living in D.C. for a while, doing a lot of e-commerce type of work, and decided to start his own e-commerce company. So his company, Ridge and River, sells outdoor equipment and apparel. He's got 2 warehouses. He just expanded in the Northwood area, and so is all online, but wants to have that brick and mortar presence, wants to be a part of the revitalization in Toledo. And also there's a market for these types of goods, and a lot of folks in the area have to drive to Ann Arbor to go to these specialty retail shops. So we were really excited to make this deal just this past year, where we acquired the building.
Is that Liberty Square, or which building is it that it's in?
This is across the street from Fowl and Fodder on Adams Street.
Okay. So
we were able to acquire this building earlier this year, where we brought on Kyle, the owner of Ridge and River, as a partner.
Okay.
We also
a 27-year-old guy. Okay.
Yep. He is very, very impressive. And we brought on another investor, actually from out of state, who made a significant contribution to acquire the building.
Okay.
Help finance the improvements, and so it's really going to help, I think, set the tone for the block, and it's going to add a lot to what we have there with Fowl and Fodder. And we're looking to also bring some other offerings to the block.
So, as I was preparing for our conversation today, brick and mortar retail, does that clearly it fits, because there's a number of people that want to make an investment in what you just described, and yet I see other brick and mortar retail going away. How do you is it specialties, very specialized, or what is it about brick and mortar that you feel like investing in now is the right thing?
I think it has to be specialized, like you say, and it has to be something different. I think, people talk about the death of retail, and I think it's the death of boring retail. I think there has to be that experience component. It has to be interesting, and I think that experience is what people want and what drives them to a store today versus just maybe the product. So when we work with our tenants, we like to work with people who are local, that really understand the area, the market, the people, and they understand what it means to build that experience. So Kyle's a great example of somebody like that, an entrepreneur that we're able to come together and really be greater than the sum of our parts. And
that's amazing.
I think the space, when everybody sees it, I think is going to I think it's going to blow people away.
Oh, that's great. I mean, I think that with what's going on with the metro parks right now, and this, and they're kayaking. This store is going to have kayaking equipment and outdoor equipment, and there's going to be urban camping in downtown Toledo. So it does sound like that it is an amazing fit. That sounds incredible.
And the metro parks have been a great assistance as well. They've actually partnered where Kyle is going to be giving a portion of the proceeds to the metro parks, and is also going to be providing some of the metro parks apparel and doing some work with the metro parks in that regard. So it's really exciting, the partnership, and that the different stakeholders downtown have really embraced this concept.
Tell me about Library Square.
Sure. Library Square was the first project that Julia Randalls and I worked on together as a partnership in Crane Development, and it was an Opportunity Zone fund deal. So what that means is as part of the 2017 tax reform, there was this program put in place for opportunity zones, where areas that are economically distressed, they were incentivized for investment. So folks that had existing capital gains from selling stocks, they could reinvest in these low-income areas. They could defer their capital gains, reduce them over time, and was a nice tool. And it just so happened that almost all of downtown was selected as an opportunity zone area, which was great because it was a place where we were already working in, and it really just added some icing on the cake. So we decided to go forward with this private offering. So we raised $500,000 from mostly local investors that we met just through networking and kind of sharing what we were about and what we were trying to do. We also were able to get about $120,000 in grants from the city of Toledo to do some facade work, and then worked with a local bank. So in total, it was a $2 million project. We developed 10 apartments and 4,000 square feet of retail space. The retail space was fully leased up. We have a bridal shop, Forevermore Bridal, that's operating. We also have BMWC Constructors. They are an industrial construction firm based out of the area. And then we also have Bella Rose Hair Salon, which they are just finishing up their build out now. But there'll be a booth salon that's got a really interesting interior. Some of the original tin ceiling is in the building,
great.
And the front facade has Frank Lloyd Wright designed prism glass pieces. And so there's just a lot of history in these old buildings, and it's really great to be a part of the preservation of those.
That's fantastic. And what about so you have 10 apartments in there as well?
Mm-hmm, correct.
Are they all sold out?
We have one vacancy right now, but we're getting quite a bit of interest, and it probably won't last long.
And what would you tell people about? Everybody wants to buy a second house to rent out or Airbnb. What is the reality about renting to people or renters, or what has that experience been like for you?
I think there is quite a bit of risk in the whole scheme of real estate in that management piece, and I think owning property, you want to make sure that it's managed well so that you're really getting your proper return and you're securing that investment well into the future. And so the way that we do that is through proper tenant screening, because if we can do a really good job screening our tenants, setting expectations, giving them an orientation on how we expect the building to be treated, and give them that equal respect, we found that that's really helped us in maintaining our properties and also maintaining those relationships with our tenants. We think the relationship aspect of things is really, really important. So we're always as responsive as possible, and we try to always add value whenever we can.
That's great. Do you run your business with core values or unbreakable principles?
We do. Integrity is certainly our biggest principle. When you're dealing with investors and when you're dealing with tenants, it can be an emotional type of process for all those folks.
Sure, it's where people live.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Or where they make their money, like you.
And so trust and respect are paramount. So we're always making sure that we do what we say and we say what we do.
That's great. So now you become the mayor of Toledo, or maybe the emperor of Toledo. What wishes would you have for downtown Toledo?
So real estate development in downtown Toledo is difficult. There's a reason why a lot of the buildings are in the condition that they are, and that things have become in the condition that they've fallen into. And at the end of the day, a lot of the times the buildings, you can make an investment to fix them up, but they may not be worth what you put into them. And
Sure.
so it makes it difficult for investment, especially when you've got other markets competing for those dollars, like Columbus, where the rents are going to be higher and the construction costs are lower.
Right.
So to make projects work in this market and to be successful, you got to get really, really scrappy, and you've got to get really creative, and you have to find a way to make the financing work, and you have to find a way to save money at every corner. And
You have to be an entrepreneur.
Exactly.
You have to dig in. You got to grind it out.
And an example about that ties to Kripke is that one of the big expenses that we have, especially during demolition, is dumpsters, and we can spend $400 per dumpster, and maybe we've got to fill up 12 of them, 15
Wow.
of them. And so it starts to add up really quickly. So what we do now in every building that we go into is we'll identify all the metal scrap. We'll take that out, we'll separate it. We don't put any of it in the dumpster, because the way we see it, it's just costing us money, taking up space.
Sure.
And we work with partners in the downtown where we will either give them the scrap or have them come in and haul it out for us, which will help. Or in a lot of cases, when we're trying to help the bottom line of that project, we're scrapping it ourselves. And so I've frequented Kripke often.
Absolutely. We love it.
Yep.
We love it. We tell people all the time, it's a great, the recycling metal is a great way to be an entrepreneur. And the people that you see picking up your grill on the side of the road, and they're bringing it here to recycle it. And when you recycle metal, you're providing the raw materials that make the things that make the United States work. So, okay, going back, you're emperor of downtown Toledo.
Right.
So I get what you're saying about the value that you create in the building just might not be valuable enough to
Correct.
make it make sense. So are there things that are there things in downtown that would help that?
There are. Yep. So there are programs like historic tax credits. So that's an example of a program that can step in and can bridge that gap. And although on paper, based on what it rents for, the building may not be worth the amount that you spend. Once you factor in that tax credit, you push yourself into a nice positive deal that any investor would want to be involved in. So it's coming up with those incentives that are they're not to line the pockets of developers. They're to make the projects feasible, competitive, and,
right?
And that being public dollars infused into these projects. These buildings are public goods. They're things that people drive down the street and they see, and it makes an impact on how they feel about their community and how they feel about themselves. So it's important that I think our leaders look at that and say, if we want to have a community that we're proud of, we need to be able to make that public investment.
Are there support businesses that are not downtown that if they were downtown, it would make life a little easier? And if there are, what are they?
Sure. I can relate to this from being a downtown resident. There were times where I remember making hamburgers and we were short on some
buns,
some vegetables,
sure.
And so there wasn't a grocery store at the time. This was before Market on the Green,
right? So
we ended up going to the Subway by the high level bridge and just asked for some tomato slices and lettuce, and they were very generous and just gave us someone who said, "All right, now this is how we get our vegetables living downtown."
Sure.
And since then there's been a lot of progress, but I think a full service grocery store closer to the very core of the city, I think would be a great step forward, especially with all of the new residential that's come online in the last just few years, and the additional residential units we have on the way. Also a pharmacy, I think, would be key. That's something where you have to drive outside of downtown in order to get to. So I think both of those items are going to be game changers for quality of life downtown, and are going to continue to drive people to live there.
Great. And what do you see as your future projects? Give us a little glimpse, maybe not take us all the way back behind the curtain, but what type of projects would you like to do next?
I would love to do large transformational projects. that are in areas of, I would say, high visibility in the downtown. So we'd like to look at some of the areas where let's see, I don't want to give much away, but as we've started in development, we were on Adams Street with Fowl and Fodder, and we've picked up some more of the properties there. On Madison is where we have Library Square,
right,
closer to 10th Street and getting a little bit more uptown. So we've been on kind of the outskirts of the warehouse district and the more central city. So I think we'd like to continue to move into that central area and find those larger opportunities.
Great. And if people want to invest with you, how do they get in touch with you?
Our website, cranedevelopment.com, is the best way to connect with us. We've got forms to contact us and also a little bit of information on investing with us. And it's also really important that we're always out there networking and collecting leads. The most powerful thing for us when we go to market is having a tenant in our pocket.
Sure.
Because if we can have the three things that we really need to operate, we need to have a building, we need a tenant, and we need investment. But having that tenant first can drive the rest of those really easily. A bank is going to finance on a lease. An investor is going to see the opportunity. So of those three things that we're constantly trying to cultivate, having those tenant leads is the most important.
So if you're any one of those things, get in touch with Matt Rubin and join in the revitalization of downtown Toledo. I appreciate it. Thanks for being the first one.
Thank you.
Thank you.